Word of the human's performance spread through the academy faster than a plasma burst through vacuum. By the next morning, Marcus found himself the subject of intense scrutiny from officers who had previously dismissed him as a primitive curiosity. The initial amusement hadn't disappeared entirely, but it was now mixed with something that might have been confusion, or perhaps concern. Commander Vextar summoned Marcus to his office, a sprawling chamber filled with holographic displays showing tactical scenarios from dozens of ongoing conflicts across the galaxy. The four-armed Altarian gestured for the human to sit in a chair that automatically adjusted to accommodate his physiology. Staff Sergeant Chen, Vextar began, his translator rendering his natural clicks into standard Galactic. Your performance yesterday has generated considerable discussion among my staff. Lieutenant Zixara's report suggests that you exceeded the parameters of our entry-level training scenarios. Marcus remained at attention despite being invited to sit. I did my best with the equipment available, sir. Yes, about that equipment. Vextar activated a holographic display showing detailed scans of Marcus's rifle. Our analysis indicates that your weapon operates on principles we abandoned over 3,000 years ago. Chemical combustion to propel metallic projectiles through magnetic acceleration tubes. No guidance systems, no target acquisition computers, no automated trajectory correction. Yet somehow, you achieved accuracy ratings that rival our advanced training systems. The commander paused, studying the human with all four of his cybernetic-enhanced eyes. I'm curious, Staff Sergeant. How do you account for variables that your primitive targeting system cannot calculate? Atmospheric density variations, gravitational flux, target movement prediction algorithms? Marcus finally accepted the chair, though he maintained his formal posture. Experience, sir. Pattern recognition. You learn to read environmental conditions and make instinctive adjustments based on thousands of similar shots. He gestured toward the holographic rifle. My equipment may seem primitive, but it has advantages your systems might not recognize, such as reliability, simplicity, no electronic signature to be detected or jammed, no power requirements beyond what I can carry, no computer systems to malfunction or be hacked. Marcus met the commander's gaze steadily, and it responds to human intuition in ways that automated systems cannot. Vextar's expression shifted to what Marcus was learning to recognize as skeptical interest. Intuition is not a tactical concept we emphasize in modern warfare. Computers calculate variables more accurately than biological minds. Automated systems react faster than neural impulses. Individual skill has been superseded by technological superiority. Respectfully, sir, Marcus said carefully. That might be true in most situations. But not all situations are standard. Sometimes technology fails. Sometimes the unexpected happens. Sometimes you need someone who can adapt when the computers don't have the right programming. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent chime from Vextar's communication system. A holographic image of Captain Threx appeared, his draconian scales rippling with excitement. Commander, we have a situation. Long-range sensors have detected unidentified vessels approaching the Academy perimeter. 3 ships, configuration unknown, not responding to standard identification protocols. Vextar's demeanor changed instantly to combat readiness. Battle stations. Activate defensive systems. How long until they reach weapon range? 17 minutes at current velocity, Threx reported. Admiral Kexthor is requesting all available personnel for defensive positions. Should I assign the human to safety protocols? Marcus stood before either alien could respond. Request permission to assist with defensive operations, sir. Both aliens looked at him with expressions that clearly questioned his sanity. Staff Sergeant, Vextar said slowly. This is potentially a real combat situation, not a training exercise. Our enemies possess weapons technology centuries beyond anything your species has encountered. Understood, sir. But I'm still a soldier, and this is still a military installation under attack. I can help. Captain Threx's image flickered with what might have been amusement. Commander, perhaps our primitive human friend could man one of the backup observation posts. Keep him out of the way, but let him feel useful. Marcus felt a familiar calm settling over him, the same focused awareness that had kept him alive through 3 combat tours against enemies who very much wanted him dead. Sir, I don't need to man anything. Give me a clear line of sight and my rifle, and I can contribute to the defense. Your rifle? Vextar's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. Staff Sergeant, we're talking about spacecraft with energy shields and armor plating designed to withstand plasma cannons. Your chemical projectile weapon would be completely ineffective against such targets. Maybe, sir, but ships still need crews, and crews still need to see where they're going. The significance of Marcus's statement took a moment to register. When it did, both aliens fell silent. The idea of engaging spacecraft crews through their viewports with a primitive rifle was so audacious that it bordered on insanity. It was also something that no enemy would expect or prepare for. Bextar made a decision that he would question many times in the hours to come. Very well, Staff Sergeant. Report to Observation Deck 7. You'll have a clear view of the approach vector, and communications will keep you informed of tactical developments. He paused, but understand that this is highly irregular. We're trusting you to use your own judgment about when and how to engage. Marcus saluted crisply. Thank you, sir. I won't disappoint you. As the human left the office, Captain Threx's image shook his scaled head in disbelief. Commander, you cannot seriously believe that one primitive soldier with an antique weapon can contribute to ship-to-ship combat. Perhaps not, Vextar admitted. But yesterday, he accomplished something that our computers said was impossible with his equipment. Today I'm curious to see what else he might do that our calculations don't account for. Marcus made his way through corridors filled with alien personnel rushing to battle stations. Emergency lighting cast everything in harsh red shadows, and the hum of charging weapon systems created an underlying vibration he could feel in his bones. The academy was transforming from a training facility into a fortress, and he was moving through it like a ghost from humanity's violent past. Observation Deck 7 turned out to be a transparent aluminum bubble that provided a panoramic view of space around the academy. Marcus could see the approaching ships as distant specks against the starfield, growing larger by the minute. He set up his rifle with practiced efficiency, using the deck's furniture to create a stable shooting platform. Through his scope, the approaching vessels resolved into sleek, predatory shapes bristling with weapons and sensor arrays. They moved with the confidence of hunters who had never encountered prey that could fight back effectively. Marcus began calculating distances, accounting for the relative motion of ships moving at velocities that dwarfed anything he had experienced on Earth. The Academy's communication system crackled to life around him. All defensive positions, unidentified vessels, are now within weapons range. They appear to be of Zephyrian pirate configuration. Standard tactics indicate they will attempt to disable our shields and board for valuable technology and captives. Marcus adjusted his scope and settled into the comfortable rhythm of controlled breathing that preceded any difficult shot. Through the transparent aluminum, space erupted in brilliant flashes as the Academy's defensive weapons engaged the attacking ships. Energy beams and guided missiles streaked between the combatants, lighting up the void like a deadly fireworks display. The pirates had clearly done their research. Their ships danced between the Academy's defensive fire with practiced ease, their own weapons systematically overwhelming shield generators and targeting defensive installations. It was becoming apparent that they had faced Galactic Federation defenses before and knew how to counter them. What they had never faced was a human sniper with a primitive rifle who didn't think like their computers expected him to think. Marcus lined up his first shot carefully, his crosshairs settling on the bridge viewport of the lead pirate vessel. The ship was over 2 kilometers away and moving at thousands of meters per second, but he had made impossible shots before. He led the target, accounting for relative motion and the slight gravitational effects of the Academy's mass. The rifle spoke once, its chemical report lost in the cacophony of space battle. Through his scope, Marcus watched as his bullet struck the bridge viewport at precisely the right moment, spiderwebbing the transparent material and causing explosive decompression that sent the ship spinning out of control. Marcus Chen stepped off the transport shuttle onto the gleaming deck of the Galactic Federation Military Academy, his worn duffel bag slung over one shoulder and his rifle case secured in his other hand. The artificial gravity felt slightly different from Earth's, but years of deployment to various hostile environments had taught him to adapt quickly to such changes. Around him, the Academy buzzed with activity as dozens of alien species moved with military precision through corridors that seemed to stretch endlessly in all directions. The human soldier drew immediate attention, though not the kind he was accustomed to receiving. Back on Earth, his reputation preceded him wherever he went. Marines would nod respectfully when he passed, and newer recruits would whisper about his legendary shots. Here, however, the attention felt different. Alien eyes tracked his movement with what he could only interpret as amused curiosity, like zoo visitors watching a particularly entertaining animal. A tall, blue-skinned figure approached with the unmistakable bearing of command authority. "Staff Sergeant Chen," the alien said in heavily accented but clear English. "I am Commander Vextar. Welcome to Advanced Military Academy 7. The commander's forearms moved in what Marcus assumed was a formal greeting, though the human couldn't shake the feeling that there was something mocking in the gesture. "Thank you for having me, sir," Marcus replied, offering a crisp salute that drew chitters and clicks from nearby alien observers. Several of them seemed to find his formal military bearing amusing, though he couldn't understand why. Commander Vextar led him through the Academy's main complex, pointing out various facilities with the air of someone showing off superior technology to a primitive visitor. The weapons range featured energy weapons that could disintegrate targets at distances Marcus could barely comprehend. The tactical simulation chambers used holographic technology so advanced that it was indistinguishable from reality. Training dummies moved with artificial intelligence that could adapt to and counter any attack pattern within microseconds. "Your quarters are in the exchange student section," Vextar explained as they walked. "You'll find the amenities quite advanced compared to Earth standards. Food synthesizers, climate control, entertainment systems with access to databases from thousands of worlds." He paused at an intersection where several corridors met. "I trust you brought your own weapons? Our equipment might be too advanced for human physiology." Marcus patted his rifle case. "Yes, sir. Standard issue M40A5 and backup equipment. Nothing fancy, but it gets the job done." The comment prompted more alien laughter from a group of passing officers, though Marcus still couldn't determine what was so amusing about his response. His quarters were indeed impressive by any standard. The room was larger than most Earth apartments, with technology that responded to voice commands in dozens of languages and environmental controls that could simulate any planetary atmosphere. Marcus set down his gear and began the familiar ritual of unpacking and organizing his equipment. The M40A5 sniper rifle emerged from its case like an old friend. Marcus had carried this particular weapon through 3 combat tours, and every scratch and modification told a story. The scope was older model by Earth standards, but he had personally adjusted it to perfection. The stock showed wear patterns from countless hours of training and actual combat use. To alien eyes, it probably looked like a museum piece. A soft chime indicated someone at his door. Marcus opened it to find a group of young alien officers, their various features bright with curiosity and barely contained laughter. The leader, a crystalline being whose body seemed to reflect light and impossible patterns, spoke first. "Staff Sergeant Chen, we're junior officers assigned to assist with your orientation. I'm Lieutenant Zixara." Her companions represented several different species, all young enough to still show enthusiasm for new experiences. "We were hoping you might demonstrate some of your equipment for us. We've never seen primitive chemical projectile weapons in person." Marcus considered the request. Part of him bristled at the casual dismissal implied by primitive, but his orders had been clear. Represent Earth's military with distinction and learn everything possible about Galactic Federation capabilities. "Sure," he said finally, "though I'd hardly call my gear primitive. This rifle has never failed me when it counted." The group made their way to one of the smaller training ranges, where Marcus began the methodical process of setting up his weapon. The aliens watched with fascination as he assembled a simple bipod, adjusted his scope settings, and began calculating range and wind conditions using nothing more than observation and mental mathematics. "You don't use targeting computers?" asked a young draconian officer whose scales shifted color with his emotions. "How do you account for gravitational variance, atmospheric density, target movement prediction?" "Experience," Marcus replied simply, settling into his shooting position. "You learn to read the environment, to feel the shot before you take it." He was aware that his explanation sounded inadequate compared to their technological solutions, but it was the truth. The range featured targets at various distances, the closest being 500 meters and the furthest stretching to nearly 3,000 meters. By Galactic Federation standards, these were considered close-range practice targets. Most alien weapons could engage effectively at interplanetary distances with computer-guided projectiles that could adjust their course mid-flight. Marcus selected a target at 800 meters, A metal silhouette that would be challenging but manageable under current conditions. He controlled his breathing, settled his heart rate, and squeezed the trigger with practiced precision. The chemical report of his rifle seemed almost pathetically quiet compared to the energy weapons that typically filled these ranges. The target's center mass showed a clean hole exactly where Marcus had aimed. The alien observers made various sounds of acknowledgement, though their body language suggested they considered this a routine accomplishment. After all, their automated systems could achieve similar accuracy without human input. "Adequate," commented Lieutenant Zixara in a tone that clearly meant to be encouraging. "For short-range work, your equipment seems functional. Would you like to try some of our training scenarios? We could program the system for appropriate difficulty levels," Marcus agreed. And the aliens activated a holographic training program designed for their newest recruits. Targets appeared at various distances, some moving, some stationary, all designed to test basic marksmanship skills. By alien standards, it was elementary-level training. What happened next would be discussed in academy corridors for days to come. Marcus began engaging targets with a speed and precision that defied the capabilities of his equipment. He hit moving targets at ranges that should have been impossible with optical scopes. He adjusted for environmental factors that the aliens hadn't even mentioned. Most impressive of all, he began predicting target movement patterns and taking shots that landed exactly where fast-moving holographic enemies would be. By the time his bullets arrived, the young officers watched in growing amazement as Marcus systematically destroyed every target in the training scenario, including several that were meant to be nearly impossible for entry-level students. His primitive chemical rifle spoke with rhythmic precision, and each shot found its mark despite using technology that was thousands of years outdated by Galactic Federation standards. When the simulation ended, the range fell silent except for the soft hum of machinery cycling down. The alien officers exchanged glances that needed no translation, their earlier amusement replaced by something approaching respect, though they weren't quite ready to admit that a primitive human with obsolete equipment had just outperformed their academy's training programs. Lieutenant Zixara was the first to speak, her crystalline form shifting to colors that Marcus was beginning to recognize as uncertainty. "That was impressive," she said carefully. "For equipment of that age, your accuracy is remarkable. Perhaps our training scenarios need recalibration for chemical projectile weapons." Marcus began cleaning his rifle with the automatic motions of long practice. "Maybe," he said quietly, though something in his tone suggested he knew exactly how well he had performed compared to their expectations. The Galactic Federation's military academy on Kepler 442b buzzed with the usual mix of species from across known space. Tall, blue-skinned Altarians towered over stocky draconian warriors, while insectoid Zephyrians clicked their mandibles in what passed for laughter among their kind. Today's entertainment came in the form of Earth's newest military exchange program data files, projected on the Academy's main holographic display. Commander Vextar, a battle-scarred Altarian with forearms and cybernetic implants covering half his face, gestured dismissively at the human soldier's profile floating before them. "Staff Sergeant Marcus Chen," he read aloud, his translator making his natural clicking sounds into standard Galactic. "Earth designation, Scout Sniper. Confirmed kills, 847. The number hung in the air as several species erupted in what could only be described as intergalactic laughter. 800? Wheezed Captain Threx, a draconian whose scales rippled with mirth. "Our basic training dummies have higher scores than that. My youngest spawn eliminated more targets in his first war simulation." The assembled crowd of elite soldiers from dozens of worlds shared in the amusement. They had good reason to mock. The average Galactic Federation soldier boasted kill counts in the tens of thousands, aided by plasma rifles that could vaporize targets from orbit and guided missiles that could track enemies across star systems. Lieutenant Zixara, whose crystalline form reflected the holographic display in rainbow patterns, chimed in with a sound like breaking glass. "Look at their primitive weapons," she said, highlighting the humans' equipment loadout. "Chemical propellant firearms? Optical scopes? This is technology our ancestors abandoned millennia ago. How did this species even achieve spaceflight?" The mockery continued as they examined Earth's military doctrine. The humans still used something called camouflage instead of personal cloaking fields. They relied on patience and stealth rather than overwhelming firepower and shield technology. Most amusing of all, they seemed to place enormous value on individual marksmanship when any civilized species had long since automated targeting systems. Perhaps we should invite one of these snipers to our next war games, suggested Colonel Braxton, his 6 eyes blinking in sequence as his tentacles gestured theatrically. It would be educational for our recruits to see how primitive warfare was conducted. We could set up historical reenactments. The suggestion was met with more laughter and several enthusiastic agreements. Commander Vextar pulled up tactical analyses from Earth's recent conflicts. "Look at this," he said, highlighting a report from something called the Iraq War. "They celebrate soldiers who can hit targets at distances of 1,000 meters. 1,000. My sidearm has an effective range triple that, and it's considered obsolete." He switched to another file. "And here, they're proud of shots taken from 2,000 meters. My ancestors could throw rocks further than that." The assembled officers continued their examination of human military records, finding endless sources of amusement. Earth soldiers seemed to spend months training for skills that Galactic Federation soldiers mastered in hours with proper technology. They practiced breathing techniques and heart rate control when military-grade stimulants could regulate such things automatically. They studied wind patterns and bullet drop when gravity manipulators could ensure perfectly straight-shot trajectories. "The most ridiculous part," said Major Kelthar, whose gas-form body shifted colors with emotion, "is that they seem to think individual skill matters. Wars are won by superior technology and overwhelming force, not by one soldier hiding in the dirt with an antique weapon." Several younger officers nodded sagely, having learned this fundamental truth in their first tactical courses. As the presentation continued, they learned about human concepts like honor and valor that seemed to revolve around personal achievement rather than technological superiority. The humans celebrated soldiers who could make difficult shots under pressure, who could remain hidden for days in hostile territory, who could track targets across vast distances using only primitive optics and mathematics calculated in their heads. "It's almost charming," commented Captain Yara, her feathered crest rising in what her species considered fond condescension, like watching children play at being warriors. "They're so proud of accomplishments that our machines can replicate without conscious thought." The real entertainment began when they accessed Earth's popular culture surrounding snipers. Movies, books, and games all depicted human marksmen as legendary figures capable of impossible feats. The Galactic Federation officers found particular amusement in stories of human snipers who could supposedly change the course of entire battles with a single, well-placed shot. Imagine believing that one primitive soldier with a chemical-powered rifle could affect military strategy, laughed Lieutenant Colonel Drexamar, his chitinous exoskeleton clicking as his body shook with mirth. "It would be like claiming a sharp stick could defeat a plasma cannon." Commander Vextar decided to make the mockery official. "I'm submitting a formal request to Earth's military exchange program," he announced. "We'll invite one of their best snipers to participate in our next joint training exercise. It will be an excellent opportunity to demonstrate the superiority of modern warfare to these newcomers." The room erupted in approval, with various species expressing enthusiasm in their own unique ways. The request was filed that same day, accompanied by carefully worded diplomatic language that masked the true intentions. Earth's military, eager to prove themselves worthy of Galactic Federation membership, responded within hours with the personnel file of Staff Sergeant Marcus Chen, along with several other qualified candidates. As the officers dispersed to their various duties, conversation continued to center on the upcoming demonstration. Bets were placed on how quickly the human would be eliminated in combat simulations. Jokes were made about whether ancient Earth weapons would even function in the Academy's training environments. Several officers began planning elaborate scenarios designed to showcase the futility of primitive warfare. None of them bothered to read the detailed combat reports buried deep in the human files. They dismissed the psychological evaluations that noted unusual stress responses and adaptation capabilities. They ignored intelligence assessments that highlighted human creativity and problem-solving abilities under extreme conditions. Most critically, they failed to understand that the numbers they were mocking represented confirmed kills in actual combat against thinking, fighting enemies who were trying just as hard to kill first. The Galactic Federation's military academy continued its normal operations, confident in their technological superiority and secure in their assumption that evolution in warfare meant evolution toward bigger, more powerful, more automated systems. The idea that there might be value in individual skill, in adaptation, in the ability to make impossible shots with inferior equipment, never seriously occurred to any of them. Staff Sergeant Marcus Chen's transport was scheduled to arrive in 3 standard days. The pirate ship's sudden loss of control sent shockwaves through both fleets. On the Academy's command bridge, tactical displays showed the lead vessel spinning wildly as emergency systems fought to seal hull breaches and restore navigation control. Commander Vextar stared at the readings in disbelief, his 4 cybernetic eyes processing data that seemed to contradict everything he understood about space combat. Tactical analysis, he barked to his bridge crew. What caused that ship to lose control? Lieutenant Colonel Dreximar's chitinous fingers danced across holographic controls as he analyzed sensor data. Sir, it appears to be catastrophic viewport failure on the main bridge. Explosive decompression, massive systems failure, complete loss of primary navigation. He paused, his insectoid features showing confusion. But sir, our weapons weren't targeting that section and their shields were still active. Captain Threx's scaled face appeared on the main display from his position in the weapon control center. Commander, this doesn't match any known failure pattern. Viewport materials are designed to withstand direct plasma hits. Something else caused this. Vexitar felt a chill of understanding creep up his spine. Communications, get me observation deck 7. Marcus's voice came through clearly, calm and professional despite the chaos of battle raging around the Academy. Observation deck 7, Staff Sergeant Chen reporting. Staff Sergeant, Vextar said slowly, did you just engage one of the attacking vessels? Yes, sir. Clean hit on the bridge viewport of the lead ship. She's out of the fight, but the other 2 are still maneuvering for attack runs. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of combat systems and the distant vibrations of defensive weapons firing. Every alien officer present was trying to process the impossible. A primitive human with a chemical projectile weapon had just disabled a starship in the middle of space combat. Staff Sergeant, Vextar continued, his voice carefully controlled. You're telling me that you engaged a target over 2 kilometers away, moving at combat velocity, with personal small arms, and achieved a mission-critical hit? Roger that, sir. Though I should mention the other 2 ships have adapted their approach. They're keeping their bridges away from my line of sight and using more erratic maneuvering patterns. Through the command bridge's main display, Vextar could see that Marcus was correct. The remaining pirate vessels had clearly witnessed their leader's fate, and were now moving with much more caution, using the Academy's own structure to block potential shooting angles while maintaining their attack. Sir, reported Lieutenant Zixara from the sensor station, her crystalline form flickering with urgent colors. The remaining vessels are coordinating a pincer attack. They're targeting our main shield generators. If they succeed, they'll be able to board us at multiple points. The Academy's defensive systems were holding for now, but everyone could see the tactical picture developing. The pirates had experience with Galactic Federation defenses and were systematically overwhelming them, using proven techniques. What they hadn't planned for was a single human with an obsolete weapon who thought in ways their tactical computers couldn't predict. Marcus's voice came through communications again. Command, I'm repositioning to observation deck 3. Better angle on the second ship's approach vector. Negative, Staff Sergeant, Vextar replied quickly. Those corridors are exposed to potential boarding actions. It's too dangerous. Respectfully, sir, everything's dangerous right now, and I've got a better chance of stopping them than your automated systems do. Before anyone could respond, Marcus had signed off communications and was presumably moving through the Academy's corridors while the battle raged around them. Vextar found himself in the unprecedented situation of having a primitive ally operating independently in the middle of a space battle, using tactics that no computer had ever been programmed to recognize. The second pirate ship had learned from its companions' fate and was approaching with its bridge section oriented, away from the Academy's observation decks. But Marcus had spent years studying enemy behavior, learning to anticipate how thinking opponents would adapt to his tactics. He reached observation deck 3 just as the vessel was completing its attack run toward the Academy's main shield generator. What the pirates hadn't anticipated was that a human sniper doesn't always aim for the most obvious target. Through his scope, Marcus could see the ship's weapon control section, where gunners would be manually targeting the Academy's defenses. These weren't automated systems that could be operated remotely. They required crew members to be physically present at targeting stations. Marcus's second shot punched through the weapons section's viewport with the same devastating effect as his first. The sudden decompression killed or incapacitated the entire gunnery crew and sent the ship's weapons systems into emergency shutdown. Without precise targeting, the vessel's plasma cannons fired wild, their energy beams scattered harmlessly into space. On the command bridge, the tactical situation was becoming surreal. Two advanced starships equipped with weapons that could devastate planets were being systematically disabled by a single soldier using technology that predated spaceflight. The readings on their screens seemed to mock everything they thought they knew about modern warfare. "Sir," Captain Threx reported, his voice tight with disbelief. "The second vessel has lost all offensive capability. They're trying to withdraw, but their navigation systems appear to be damaged. The third pirate ship was now alone and facing a situation its crew had never trained for. Their tactical computers had no programming for dealing with an enemy who could disable starships using projectile weapons." The ship's captain was forced to make decisions without computer assistance, relying on instincts that had been dulled by decades of automated warfare. Marcus had moved again, this time to a maintenance airlock that provided a clear view of the third ship's approach. He could see through his scope that the vessel was maintaining maximum distance while trying to use long-range weapons to destroy the Academy's defensive systems. It was a sound strategy that should have worked against conventional defenders. But Marcus wasn't conventional, and he had identified a vulnerability that no Galactic Federation tactical manual had ever considered. The ship's long-range targeting required precise sensor arrays, and those arrays needed to be exposed to function effectively. Through his scope, he could see the sensor operator's station, positioned behind a viewport that was designed to withstand energy weapons but had never been tested against kinetic projectiles, traveling at the velocities his rifle could achieve. His third shot was the most difficult yet, requiring him to account for the maximum range of his weapon, the complex movements of both the Academy and the target ship, and gravitational effects that were at the very edge of his ability to calculate. The bullet's flight time seemed eternal as it crossed the void between sniper and target. When it struck, the effect was even more dramatic than his previous shots. The sensor array's explosive decompression created a cascade failure that knocked out the ship's navigation, targeting, and communication systems simultaneously. The vessel found itself effectively blind and deaf in the middle of a combat zone, forced to withdraw using only backup systems that provided minimal functionality. Throughout the Academy, alien personnel stared at their tactical displays in stunned silence. 3 advanced warships had been neutralized by a single human using a weapon that most of them considered a museum piece. The implications were staggering and would require a complete reassessment of everything they thought they knew about combat effectiveness. Commander Vextar activated communications to Observation Deck 7, though he knew Marcus was no longer there. "Staff Sergeant Chen, report your status." Marcus's voice came through from wherever he had positioned himself for his final shot. "All targets neutralized, sir. The third ship is withdrawing with minimal functionality. I don't think they'll be back anytime soon." "Staff Sergeant," Vextar said carefully, "I believe we need to have another conversation about primitive warfare and individual skill." "Yes, sir," Marcus replied, and Vextar could hear something that might have been quiet satisfaction in the human's voice. "I'll be happy to discuss tactics whenever you're ready." In the aftermath of the battle, the Galactic Federation Military Academy had become the most talked-about installation in 3 star systems. News of a primitive human soldier single-handedly defeating 3 pirate vessels spread through communication networks faster than ships could travel between worlds. What had started as a training exercise designed to demonstrate the superiority of advanced technology had become a legend that challenged everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare. Commander Vextar stood in his office, reviewing after-action reports that read like science fiction. His 4 cybernetic eyes processed data streams from dozens of sources, all confirming the impossible. Staff Sergeant Marcus Chen had used a chemical projectile weapon to disable 3 starships in active combat. The tactical analysts were calling it the most significant military event in over 1,000 years. Marcus sat across from the commander, his ancient rifle cleaned and stored in its case, his bearing as calm and professional as if he had just completed a routine training exercise. The human showed no signs of the excitement or pride that Vextar would have expected from someone who had just accomplished the impossible. "Staff Sergeant," Vextar began, his translator struggling to convey the complexity of his emotions. "I find myself in the unusual position of having to revise fundamental assumptions about warfare that have remained unchanged for millennia." He gestured to the holographic displays surrounding them, showing tactical analyses of the battle. "Our computers are still trying to calculate how you achieved what you did," Marcus shrugged slightly. "Respectfully, sir, computers can't calculate everything. Sometimes you have to think outside the programming." "Indeed." Vextar pulled up detailed scans of the disabled pirate vessels, now being towed to secure facilities for analysis. "Our engineering teams have examined the damage patterns. Your projectiles achieved penetration that should have been impossible given the energy levels involved. The viewports you targeted were designed to withstand direct hits from plasma cannons." "Different kind of stress, sir," Marcus explained. "Energy weapons deliver their force across a surface area and over time. A rifle bullet concentrates its energy into a single point and delivers it instantaneously. The materials that can absorb energy beams aren't necessarily designed to handle kinetic impact from small, dense projectiles." The explanation was simple, logical, and completely revolutionary. For thousands of years, Galactic Federation engineers had focused on developing defenses against energy weapons, gravitational manipulators, and exotic particle beams. The idea that primitive kinetic weapons might exploit vulnerabilities in advanced defensive systems had never occurred to anyone. A soft chime announced the arrival of other officers, and Vexitar granted them permission to enter. Captain Threx, Lieutenant Zixara, and several other senior staff filed in, their expressions ranging from bewildered respect to outright amazement. All of them had witnessed the battle, and all of them were struggling to process what they had seen. "Staff Sergeant Chen," Captain Threx said, his scales shifting to colors that Marcus was learning indicated confusion. "My tactical computers have run simulations of your engagement parameters over 3,000 times. According to every calculation, what you accomplished should have been impossible." Lieutenant Zixara's crystalline form sparkled with rapid color changes as she spoke. "The targeting solutions alone should have required computational power beyond what any biological mind can achieve. You were calculating trajectory for targets moving at velocities measured in kilometers per second, over distances where gravitational effects become significant variables." Marcus considered his response carefully. These were professional soldiers asking legitimate tactical questions, and they deserved honest answers. "It's not really calculation, not the way you're thinking about it. It's more like pattern recognition, intuition based on experience. You develop a feel for how things move, how forces interact, how to compensate for variables you can't measure precisely." "Intuition," repeated Vextar slowly. "You're telling us that you defeated advanced starships using intuition?" "Partly, yes, sir. But it's educated intuition. I've taken thousands of difficult shots under combat conditions. You learn to read situations, to anticipate how targets will behave, to make adjustments based on factors you can't quantify but can sense." The assembled officers exchanged glances that needed no translation. The concept of educated intuition was so foreign to their technological approach to warfare that they might as well have been discussing magic. Their weapon systems relied on precise calculations, automated targeting, and computer-controlled engagement protocols. The idea that biological judgment could outperform technological systems challenged their fundamental understanding of military effectiveness. Major Kelthar, whose gaseous form had been shifting nervously throughout the conversation, finally spoke. "Staff Sergeant, if what you're describing is accurate, then our entire approach to military training may be fundamentally flawed. We've spent centuries perfecting technological solutions to combat problems, but we've never considered that individual skill might remain relevant." "It's not that technology is wrong, sir," Marcus replied diplomatically. "It's just that it's not the complete answer. Technology gives you capabilities, but experience teaches you how to use those capabilities in unexpected ways." Commander Vextar activated a holographic display showing the Academy's training facility. "Staff Sergeant, I'm authorizing a comprehensive evaluation of your methods. We need to understand how human training techniques might complement our technological advantages." He paused, studying Marcus with all four of his cybernetic eyes. Would you be willing to work with our instructors to develop new training protocols? Marcus nodded. I'd be honored, sir. Though I should mention that what I do isn't easily taught through standard instruction. It takes years of practice, thousands of rounds fired, and real combat experience to develop the instincts I'm talking about. Years? Lieutenant Zixara's form flickered with colors that indicated surprise. Our advanced training programs can impart combat skills in weeks through neural interface technology and accelerated learning protocols. That might teach tactics and technical knowledge, Marcus agreed. But it can't teach judgment. It can't teach you how to stay calm when everything goes wrong, or how to adapt when your equipment fails, or how to make split-second decisions that computers weren't programmed to handle. The implications of his words settled over the room like a gravity field. Every officer present had been trained using the most advanced educational technology available, their minds enhanced with cybernetic implants that could access vast databases of tactical information. Yet none of them had performed feats comparable to what this primitive human had accomplished with obsolete equipment. Captain Threx was the first to voice what everyone was thinking. Staff Sergeant, are you suggesting that our training methods, despite their technological sophistication, may be producing soldiers who are less capable than those trained using primitive methods? Marcus chose his words carefully. I'm suggesting that different training methods produce different capabilities. Your soldiers are excellent at utilizing advanced technology and following complex tactical protocols, but they might struggle in situations where the technology fails or where the protocols don't apply, such as electronic warfare that disables your computer systems, equipment failures in hostile environments, situations where you're forced to improvise with limited resources, opponents who don't behave the way your tactical computers expect them to. The room fell silent as the officers considered these possibilities. Their entire military doctrine was based on technological superiority and the assumption that advanced systems would always function as designed. The idea that enemies might find ways to neutralize or circumvent their technological advantages was deeply unsettling. Commander Vextar made a decision that would reshape Galactic Federation military doctrine for generations to come. Staff Sergeant Chen, I'm requesting that you extend your stay at our academy indefinitely. We need to conduct a complete reassessment of our training methods, and we need your expertise to develop new approaches that combine technological advantages with individual skill. Marcus stood and saluted. I'll need to clear it with my superiors on Earth, sir. But I'm willing to help in any way I can. As the meeting concluded and the officers dispersed to their various duties, each carried with them questions that would challenge everything they thought they knew about warfare. The human had shown them that there were still mysteries in combat that technology couldn't solve. Still advantages to be gained through individual skill and judgment. Marcus gathered his equipment and prepared to return to his quarters, unaware that his simple demonstration of marksmanship had just sparked a revolution in military thinking that would spread across the galaxy. 3 months after the pirate attack, the Galactic Federation Military Academy had been transformed into something unprecedented in the galaxy's recorded history. What had once been a sterile technological training facility had become a laboratory for exploring the forgotten arts of individual military skill and adaptive combat techniques. Marcus found himself at the center of this revolution, working 18-hour days with alien instructors who approached learning with the same intensity they had once reserved for mastering advanced weapon systems. The shooting ranges that had once echoed only with the hum of energy, weapons now resounded with the sharp reports of chemical, projectile firearms as officers from dozens of species attempted to master what humans called marksmanship. The results were mixed but encouraging. Some species, particularly those with multiple limbs or enhanced sensory organs, showed remarkable aptitude for precision shooting once they understood the principles involved. Others struggled with concepts like breath, control and trigger squeeze that came naturally to humans but required extensive retraining for beings. Evolved under different gravitational and atmospheric conditions, Lieutenant Zixara had become one of Marcus's most dedicated students, her crystalline form allowing her to achieve perfect stillness while aiming. Her natural ability to process light spectra invisible to human eyes gave her advantages in reading environmental conditions that even Marcus found impressive. Today she was working on long-range targets while Marcus observed and offered guidance. Remember, Marcus called out from behind her firing position, don't fight the recoil. Accept it as part of the weapon's natural cycle. Let it happen. Then settle back into your sight picture for the follow-up shot. Zixara's rifle spoke, and a target at 1,500 meters showed a hit just off center mass. For a student who had started training only 2 months earlier, it was exceptional shooting. For someone who had previously relied entirely on computer-guided weapons, it was miraculous. Better, Marcus commented. You're starting to trust your instincts instead of trying to calculate everything. That's the key to developing real marksmanship skills. It's still difficult, Zixara admitted, her form shifting to colors that indicated frustration mixed with determination. My natural inclination is to analyze wind speed, atmospheric density, gravitational variance, and target movement mathematically. Learning to feel these variables instead of computing them goes against millions of years of evolution. Marcus nodded, understanding. That's why it takes time and practice. You're not just learning a new skill. You're developing new ways of thinking. Your brain has to create neural pathways that connect sensory input directly to motor control, bypassing conscious calculation. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Commander Vextar, accompanied by a group of high-ranking officers that Marcus didn't recognize. The newcomers represented several species he had never seen before, their uniforms indicating ranks and positions far above academy level. Staff Sergeant Chen, Vextar said formally, I'd like you to meet Admiral Kexthor of the Federation Defense Council, General Yathara of Strategic Planning, and Colonel Drexman of Advanced Warfare Research. Marcus came to attention and saluted, which the alien officers returned with varying degrees of familiarity with human customs. Admiral Kexthor, a massive being whose species Marcus couldn't identify, spoke first in a voice that seemed to rumble through the ground itself. Staff Sergeant Chen, the Admiral said, your techniques have caused considerable discussion at the highest levels of Federation Command. We've come to observe these training methods personally, and to discuss their potential applications to our broader military doctrine. I'm honored by your interest, sir, Marcus replied, though I should emphasize that what we're developing here is just one approach to military training. It's not meant to replace your advanced systems, but to complement them. General Yathara, whose 8-limbed form moved with surprising grace, gestured toward the firing range where several alien officers were practicing with primitive kinetic weapons. Staff Sergeant, our analysis suggests that incorporating your methods could improve combat effectiveness by measurable percentages across all military specialties. This represents the first significant advancement in individual soldier capability in over 1,000 years. Colonel Drexman, whose cybernetic enhancements made even Commander Vextar look primitive, pulled up holographic displays showing tactical analysis from recent engagements. We've been reviewing combat reports from across the galaxy, looking for situations where individual skill might have changed outcomes. The results are remarkable. The displays showed dozens of scenarios where technological solutions had failed or proven insufficient, where individual judgment and adaptability might have made critical differences. Boarding actions where computer-guided weapons were ineffective in close quarters, electronic warfare situations where targeting systems failed, reconnaissance missions where automated sensors were detected and defeated. What we're seeing, Admiral Kexthor continued, is that warfare has become so dependent on technology that we've created vulnerabilities that we never anticipated.
Enemies who can neutralize our technological advantages can render our forces significantly less effective than they should be. Marcus studied the tactical displays with professional interest.
The scenarios they were showing represented exactly the kinds of situations where human military doctrine emphasized individual skill and adaptability. Sir, if I may ask, are these theoretical scenarios or actual combat reports? Actual combat, General Yathara replied grimly. We've lost contact with 3 frontier colonies in the past 6 months. When we investigate, we find Federation garrisons that were defeated by forces using what we initially dismissed as primitive tactics, low-technology approaches that somehow overcame our advanced defenses. The implication was sobering. Somewhere in the galaxy, enemies had learned the same lesson that Marcus had demonstrated at the Academy. Technological superiority could be countered by unconventional thinking and individual skill. The question now was whether the Federation could adapt quickly enough to meet this new threat. Staff Sergeant, Admiral Kexthor said, we're authorizing immediate expansion of your training program. We need these techniques disseminated throughout the Federation military as quickly as possible. Marcus considered the scope of what they were asking. Sir, that's going to require fundamental changes to your entire military education system. This isn't just about teaching marksmanship. It's about developing judgment, adaptability, and independent thinking. Those are qualities that take years to develop properly. We understand the challenges, Colonel Drexman replied, but we also understand the necessity. Our technological advantages mean nothing if our enemies can neutralize them, and our soldiers are helpless without their computer systems. Lieutenant Zixara, who had been listening quietly to the conversation, spoke up hesitantly. If I may, Admiral, Staff Sergeant Chen's methods have taught me something that no computer simulation ever could. They've taught me to trust my own judgment even when I don't have complete information. Explain, the Admiral commanded. In traditional training, we're taught to gather all available data before making decisions. But in real combat, you don't always have that luxury. Staff Sergeant Chen's techniques teach you to make good decisions with incomplete information, to adapt when your tools fail, to succeed even when everything goes wrong. The assembled officers exchanged glances that needed no translation. They were beginning to understand that what Marcus offered wasn't just an alternative training method. It was a fundamentally different approach to military thinking. Staff Sergeant Chen, Admiral Kexthor said finally, we're placing you in charge of developing Federation-wide training protocols based on your methods. You'll have unlimited resources and access to our best instructors and facilities. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He was being asked to revolutionize the military doctrine of a galactic civilization, to prepare them for enemies who fought in ways their computers couldn't predict. It was both an incredible honor and a daunting challenge. I'll need to work with human military advisors, he said finally. This isn't just about individual techniques. It's about military philosophy. We'll need to completely rethink how you approach soldier development. Whatever you need, the Admiral replied. The survival of the Federation may depend on how quickly we can adapt. As the high-ranking officers departed to begin implementing Marcus's expanded training program, the human sniper stood on the firing range surrounded by alien students, who were learning to trust their instincts in ways their species had never considered necessary. The galaxy was about to discover that sometimes the oldest lessons were the most important ones, and that individual skill could still change the course of history, even in an age of technological miracles. 1 year after Marcus Chen first stepped off a transport shuttle onto the gleaming deck of the Galactic Federation Military Academy, the entire galaxy had changed. What had begun as mockery of primitive human warfare had evolved into the most significant military revolution in recorded galactic history. Marcus stood in the Academy's main briefing hall, addressing an audience of over 3,000 officers representing 47 different species from across the Federation. Behind him, holographic displays showed training statistics, combat effectiveness improvements, and tactical analyses that told the story of humanity's accidental gift to galactic civilization. 12 months ago, Marcus began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall's translation systems. Most of you considered individual marksmanship to be an obsolete skill, irrelevant in an age of computer-guided weapons and automated targeting systems. Today, Federation forces, equipped with adaptive combat training, have successfully resolved 17 separate conflicts that conventional tactics had failed to address. The statistics on the display were impressive by any standard. Units trained in Marcus's methods showed 40% improvements in mission success rates, 60% reductions in equipment dependency failures, and most significantly, 90% improvements in effectiveness when facing unconventional enemies. Commander Vextar, now promoted to Admiral, and serving as Marcus's primary liaison, stepped forward to address the assembly. Staff Sergeant Chen's training protocols have fundamentally changed how we approach military education. We've learned that technological supremacy, while valuable, is not sufficient for complete combat effectiveness. In the audience, Lieutenant Zixara sat among other graduates of the Advanced Marksmanship program. Her crystalline form had acquired new modifications that enhanced her natural light processing abilities, making her one of the most effective snipers in the Federation. Around her, officers from dozens of species showed similar adaptations as they had learned to combine their natural abilities with human tactical concepts. The transformation had not been easy. Many traditional military instructors had resisted changes to training methods that had remained unchanged for centuries. Some species had struggled more than others to adapt to concepts like intuitive decision-making and individual initiative, but the results spoke for themselves, and opposition had gradually given way to enthusiasm as the benefits became undeniable. Marcus activated a tactical display showing recent combat operations. The Kepler sector incident provides an excellent example of how adaptive training changes battlefield outcomes, he said. Federation forces faced an enemy that had completely neutralized their targeting computers using advanced electronic warfare. Traditional tactics would have resulted in mission failure and significant casualties. The display showed the tactical situation: a Federation task force attempting to retake a colony that had been captured by technologically sophisticated pirates. The enemy had deployed jamming systems that rendered standard Federation weapons nearly useless, creating exactly the kind of scenario that Marcus's training was designed to address. Units equipped with backup, kinetic weapons, and trained in individual marksmanship were able to complete their mission objectives, despite the technological disadvantage. Marcus continued. They adapted to conditions that their computers couldn't handle, using judgment and skill to overcome superior technology. Admiral Kexathor rose from his position among the senior officers. The implications extend beyond individual combat effectiveness, he said. We've discovered that soldiers trained in adaptive methods show improved performance across all military specialties. Engineering units are more creative in solving technical problems. Command officers make better decisions under pressure. Communication specialists are more effective when their equipment fails. The revelation had surprised everyone, including Marcus. Teaching soldiers to trust their instincts and adapt to unexpected situations had created ripple effects throughout the military that no one had anticipated. The Federation was developing a more flexible, resilient military force that could function effectively, even when their technological advantages were neutralized. General Yathara, whose 8 limbs moved in patterns that indicated excitement, presented the next phase of development. We're implementing expanded training programs on 200 worlds, with plans to include adaptive combat methods in all basic military education within 5 years. Marcus felt a mixture of pride and responsibility as he considered the scope of what they had accomplished. Human military concepts that had evolved over thousands of years of warfare were now being adapted by species across the galaxy, creating new forms of military effectiveness that combined the best of individual skill with technological capability. The presentation concluded with a demonstration that had become traditional at these gatherings. Marcus took the stage with his original M40A5 rifle, the same weapon that had seemed so primitive to alien eyes just 1 year earlier. Now it was displayed in the Academy's museum as a symbol of the revolution in military thinking that had transformed galactic warfare. Setting up at a range that extended through the Academy's main transparent aluminum viewing port, Marcus prepared to engage targets in space that were moving at combat velocities. The demonstration had become more than just marksmanship. It was a reminder that individual skill remained relevant, even in an age of technological miracles. The targets were automated drones programmed to simulate the movement patterns of enemy spacecraft. They moved at velocities and distances that would challenge even computer-guided weapons, following flight paths that required complex calculations to intercept successfully. Marcus settled into his shooting position, his rifle trained on targets thousands of meters away, and moving at speeds that made them barely visible to unenhanced human vision. Around him, the Academy fell silent as thousands of alien officers watched a demonstration of the principles that had revolutionized their understanding of warfare. His first shot reached out across the void to disable a drone moving in a complex, evasive pattern. The projectile struck with precision that still amazed observers, despite having witnessed similar demonstrations dozens of times. But what impressed them more than the accuracy was the speed with which Marcus acquired and engaged multiple targets, his human intuition allowing him to anticipate movements that computers would have required microseconds to calculate. 5 shots, 5 disabled drones, 5 demonstrations that individual skill could still accomplish what technology alone could not. The watching officers erupted in sounds that their various species used to express approval and amazement. As Marcus secured his weapon and prepared to leave the stage, Admiral Vextar approached him with an expression that combined respect, gratitude, and something that might have been wonder. "Staff Sergeant Chen," the Admiral said formally, "on behalf of the Galactic Federation Defense Council, I want to thank you for sharing humanity's gift with the galaxy. You've reminded us that warriors are more than the weapons they carry." Marcus saluted the assembled officers, then spoke words that would be repeated in military academies across the galaxy for generations to come. "Technology gives us capabilities, but skill and judgment determine how we use them. The best warrior is one who can adapt to any situation, overcome any challenge, and succeed even when everything goes wrong." As the ceremony concluded and the officers dispersed to implement training programs on their homeworlds, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought him from Earth to this moment. He had come to the academy as a curiosity, a primitive soldier with obsolete equipment. He was leaving as the architect of a military revolution that would reshape how the galaxy approached warfare. The Galactic Federation had learned that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't any particular technology or tactic. It was the human ability to adapt, to overcome, and to find ways to succeed even when facing impossible odds. In teaching the galaxy to shoot, Marcus had taught them something far more valuable. He had taught them to think like humans. Outside the Academy's windows, stars stretched endlessly across the void, representing thousands of worlds where soldiers were learning that the oldest lessons were sometimes the most important ones. The galaxy would never again underestimate the power of individual skill, adaptive thinking, and the warrior's spirit that refused to accept defeat. Marcus Chen, the American sniper who had once been mocked by galactic soldiers, had given the universe a gift that would echo through the ages. The knowledge that in any conflict, the most important weapon was the mind and spirit of the warrior who wielded it.